My name is Emily, and what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's a scar I've carried for 2 decades. I was only 17 when my parents drove me to an old train station and left me there, intentionally. It wasn't a mistake. They didn't forget me. They planned it like it was some kind of twisted lesson, a sick experiment, testing how long it would take before I broke or crawled back. I didn't go back. I couldn't. Something inside me shattered that day. But 20 years later, they came looking, not with open arms, but with open hands, not out of love, not because they missed me, and certainly not out of regret. They needed something, money, influence, or maybe just to feel in charge again. When I refused, they didn't beg. They retaliated. They turned my blood into strangers. They whispered lies like poison into every ear that once trusted me. They tried to tear down every brick of the life I had built without them. The July heat pressed down like a second skin as I leaned against the car window, my eyes heavy, the soft thrum of the highway muffled beneath my headphones. My parents, Frank and Karen, were up front, locked in their usual low-grade argument. Something about gas money or directions, probably. I'd stopped listening years ago. The 2-lane road sliced through the forgotten backroads of Alabama, stretching endlessly into nowhere. We had just spent a joyless weekend visiting my older sister Rachel at her college dorm. The visit played out like everyone before, Rachel faking smiles, Mom launching subtle jabs disguised as compliments, and Dad grunting commands like we were in boot camp. It was familiar, exhausting, but familiar. Another chapter in the unspoken curriculum my parents had designed just for me. I blinked myself awake as the car rolled to a slow stop. Just off the highway stood a crumbling train station, the kind time forgets, its sign half faded, its roof sagging. Dad turned the wheel sharply and parked by 2 ancient vending machines, their exteriors blistered from decades of southern sun. "Grab me a Coke," he muttered, eyes still on the cracked windshield. I pulled off one earbud. "Huh?" Mom turned toward me, that porcelain smile stretched across her face, tight, hollow. "Be a dear and get your father a soda, and I'll take a water." I exhaled sharply and shoved the door open. The heat slammed into me like an oven door left ajar. I didn't waste breath arguing. It never changed anything. The machines stood like sentries beside the boarded-up doors, paint blistered, logos barely legible. I fished a crumpled 5 from my jeans and shoved it into the slot, jabbing the buttons with practiced boredom. The machine groaned in protest before coughing up a warm can of soda and a dusty bottle of water. I turned around with the drinks in hand, fully expecting to see our dusty car idling by the curb. But the space was empty, completely. My brain stalled, refusing to compute the obvious. Maybe they circled the lot. Maybe it was a bad joke. I stepped forward slowly, heart thudding as I scanned the lifeless stretch of cracked asphalt. Then my phone vibrated sharply against my leg. A text from Mom lit the screen. "Let's see how long you last. Call it a lesson in problem solving." My stomach twisted into knots. This wasn't miscommunication. It was abandonment, cold, calculated. My fingers trembled as I dialed Dad. Voicemail. Again. I stood frozen, the bottle crackling in my grip, heartbeat roaring in my ears. A train wailed in the distance like a cruel reminder. They were gone. I should have cried. I should have panicked. But instead, a cold, eerie calm swept over me like armor. It wasn't new, just a crueler chapter in an old story. Age 13, locked outside during a thunderstorm because I forgot the trash. 14, 7-mile march home in pouring rain for missing the bus by 3 minutes. This was just their latest message. I didn't matter. Not really. Around me, strangers drifted by, unaware of the teenage girl gripping soda and fury in equal measure. I wasn't staying. I wasn't their pawn anymore. I checked my pocket, $140 from babysitting and stocking shelves. It had to be enough. The man behind the counter didn't even blink when I stepped up. "Where's the nearest bus station?" I asked, voice steady while my stomach churned. He jabbed a finger to the left. 2 miles, give or take. I nodded once and started walking. My phone buzzed again. "Don't even think about calling your aunt. Your father says this is your test." I blocked her number, then dialed the one person they feared I'd call. It rang twice. "Emily?" came the warm, worried voice. I swallowed. "Linda, I need help." I kept my voice even, though my hands were shaking. "Emily?" Her voice tightened. Sharp, urgent, maternal. "Where are you, sweetheart?" I clutched the phone so hard my knuckles ached. I stood alone on that cracked platform, left behind by the very people who once tucked me in at night. My heart thundered, but my voice didn't tremble. "They left me here, Linda." Just like that, they drove off and didn't look back. Silence. Then her breath caught. "Don't move, baby. I'm on my way." That call was 20 years ago. Now I stood in my corner office at Haven Developments, the empire I built, watching the Austin skyline blur beneath sunset. The city below pulsed with life, traffic weaving like blood through the veins of concrete. But in this room, it was just me, and the past I thought I'd buried clawing its way back. My phone lit up like a warning flare. 40 missed calls. I skipped the unknowns. One name burned into the screen. Rachel, a name I'd deleted from my life 20 years ago. My gut turned to stone as I hit play. "Emmy, please. They found you. Mom and Dad, they're desperate. They need you." I clenched the phone. "Emmy." She still said it like we were 10, like she hadn't erased me when I disappeared. I exhaled through my teeth and hit delete. The second was nothing but sobs. By the third message, she was breathless, desperate. "Emily, please just call me back. You don't know what's happening." I dropped the phone before I hurled it across the room. They had tracked me down, and I knew why. I left them with $140 and a one-way bus ticket, and I never looked back. I juggled 3 jobs, lived in a shoebox apartment that reeked of mildew, and fought tooth and nail through school. Every inch of Haven Developments was built from the ashes of what they tried to burn. And now, after all these years, they wanted to re-enter the world I bled to create. I sat down slowly, fingers trembling as I buried them in my hair. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but inside, I was bracing for war. I always knew they'd find me. I just didn't think it would be today. I scrolled down and froze. Frank Holloway, the man who taught me silence. My thumb hovered, then clicked. The second his voice cracked through the speaker, something in me locked up. "So, you think you're too good for your own blood now?" His voice dragged like wet gravel, soaked in whiskey and spite. "You owe us. Every damn thing you have, we gave it to you." My jaw locked as his slurring turned into a sermon. "You think you can delete us like old contacts? Family doesn't work that way." He spat the words like venom. "Life doesn't let you just walk away. You owe us." The message cut off. Then came the text, cold and scripted. "Your father is deeply disappointed. Call us. We need to talk." I stared at the words until they blurred. My chest tightened like a vice. Disappointed? They left me to rot at 17, and now they had the audacity to be disappointed? Rage surged through me like fire. They were the same manipulators, untouched by time. I leaned back, my grip on the phone turning rigid as I crushed the scream clawing up my throat. The 17-year-old in me howled in silence. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had found my power, and this time I would not run, I would face them. I opened the chat with Rachel and typed, "Tomorrow, Denny's F Street, 5:07 a.m. You come alone or not at all." I hit send and exhaled. The city outside hadn't changed, but I had. Tomorrow I would face my past in the form of the one person I once loved most. And for the first time, I felt no fear. I was already in the booth when Rachel stepped in, scanning the diner like a hunted animal. She looked like a photograph stuck in time. Same features, same controlled stance. But age had drawn new truths into her face. Subtle lines, a posture that sagged under secrets. She had always been the golden child, the fixer, the favorite, the quiet accomplice. But now she looked like someone drowning under everything she never said. Our eyes locked. No words, no smiles. Then she walked over slowly, fingers brushing back her hair like a nervous habit. "Hey, Emmy." The name landed like a stone. I sipped my coffee and said, calm as ice, "It's Emily now." Her smile cracked. "Right, of course." She sat across, fingers twitching against the menu like they didn't know where to land. "It's been a while," she said, voice thin like paper. I stayed silent, waiting for the truth to crawl out from behind her careful words. She sighed. "You look good." I raised an eyebrow. "You look nervous." Rachel chuckled dryly, but her eyes stayed haunted. "Look, I know this is messy." "No, Rachel, it's not complicated. You want something. Cut to it." I leaned forward, voice flat. She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "It's Mom and Dad. They're not okay." And there it was, the ask. She rushed ahead, her voice polished like a script. "Dad's deep in gambling debt. Mom maxed out the cards. They're underwater, Emily. The house is gone." My jaw tensed as I stared across the table, unmoved. "They need saving. And apparently, you're their plan." I exhaled, slow and cold. "I don't owe them a cent, not a second." Rachel winced like the words had slapped her. "I'm not asking you to forgive them," she whispered. "I'm just asking you to hear me out." I tightened my grip around the mug, the gall, the hypocrisy. Listen. No one listened when I stood alone on that train platform with a soda in my hand and my world collapsing. No one listened when I was drenched in rain, punished for being a child. I leaned back, heart thudding with something raw, anger, grief, betrayal. "That wasn't a mistake, Rachel." My voice was steel. "They abandoned me. On purpose, like trash." She flinched. "They came back. Eventually," I snapped. "And who left in the first place?" The silence shattered like glass between us. Years of denial fractured in a single second. Rachel's hands shook in her lap as her eyes darted away. "They thought you'd come back," she whispered, breaking apart. "They thought I'd crawl back, didn't they?" I said. "Like I always used to." She couldn't look at me, could barely breathe. I shook my head slowly. "I stopped being their daughter the day they left me." Her shoulders trembled, but I stayed firm. I reached into my coat, pulled out some cash, and let it fall on the table. "If they reach out again, I won't be this nice." Rachel didn't move. She just stared, silent. I stood, turned, and walked out without a backward glance. I thought that was the end of the story, but the past doesn't let go that easily. The next morning, I drowned myself in work, trying to scrub the memory of that booth clean from my mind. It left a bitterness behind, but I wouldn't give it the power to ruin my momentum. I thought I had buried the past beneath steel and concrete. I thought they couldn't touch what I'd built. I was wrong. A sharp knock cut through my thoughts like glass. Megan stood at the threshold, face pale, lips pressed tight with unease. "Boss, you'll want to see this." She walked in, phone trembling slightly in her hand. I took the phone, already dreading what I'd find. Facebook was open. My breath stalled mid-chest. Our daughter turned her back on us in our twilight years after all we gave her. Another post followed. We taught her strength, and she chose cruelty. A searing heat climbed the back of my neck. They were rewriting history, recasting themselves as martyrs. Hundreds of strangers weighed in, judging, shaming. They shared the posts, tagged Haven Developments like it was a scandal to expose. I scrolled, each comment like a slap. Unbelievable, raised with love and turned out heartless. Shame of a daughter, spoiled, soulless brat. Let her rot in that glass tower she built. Money changed her into something monstrous. I slammed the phone onto the desk, the crack echoing. Megan flinched. "I didn't want to bother you, but it's going viral. Clients are noticing. Negative reviews are popping up. They're calling you fake, heartless, a scam." My pulse roared in my ears. This was no post. This was war. I inhaled, steadying the storm inside. "Who else has seen this?" Megan shifted. "Some team members, a few top clients. They're watching, Emily, waiting." I gave a slow nod. "Thanks, I've got this." As soon as the door clicked shut, I dialed a number buried deep in my past. Rachel picked up on the third ring. "Emmy?" she asked, cautious. I clenched the phone. "Rachel, did you?" No silence. Then she breathed out. "I warned them not to, but they're desperate, Emmy." I gave a bitter laugh. "Desperate? No, Rachel. Desperate doesn't mean malicious. They just want a lifeline," she offered weakly. "They think this is the only way to reach you," she added. I scoffed. "By lying to the world? By making strangers hate me?" Rachel stayed silent. I shook my head at the silence, at her cowardice. Shame on me for thinking they'd ever be different. I ended the call before her guilt could leak through. A message buzzed in. "Ungrateful child. Take it down." I stared at the message. A cold, surgical calm settled in my chest. Then I opened my own account and typed, "When people rewrite the past to look innocent, someone has to speak the truth. That someone is me." I hit post, no hesitation, and tossed the phone on my desk like it burned. They wanted war? I'd give them one. I thought the online smear campaign was the low point. Then they brought it to my doorstep. I had spent the entire week in crisis mode, scrubbing comments, calming clients, dodging unsolicited opinions from relatives who knew nothing. I ran on fumes, caffeine, and fury. Then the intercom buzzed. "Emily," Megan said, uncertain. "There's an older couple insisting to see you." I froze mid-sip. My coffee turned to ash in my mouth. "Names?" I asked, already knowing. Megan exhaled. "They said they're your parents." I exhaled through clenched teeth, masking the fire behind my eyes. "Tell them I'm unavailable." Megan paused. "They're creating a scene." Of course they were. That was their specialty. I set down the mug, rose, and headed to the lobby. The moment I stepped out, I saw them. Karen was already crying without tears, clutching a crumpled tissue. Frank stood stiff, arms folded, eyes like knives scanning the room. The moment our eyes met, Karen howled. "My baby!" "Won't even speak to your own mother?" she cried, loud enough for the room to freeze. I froze mid-stride, my jaw locked. Whispers rose like smoke. Phones came out, like this was primetime television. I swallowed hard. Bitterness coated my tongue. Frank sneered. "Look at you," he spat. "All dressed up, thinking you're better. You forgot where you came from." I didn't flinch. My voice was steel. "Get out, now." Karen gasped theatrically, one hand on her chest like she might faint at any moment. I carried you. I sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay us? She cried. I met her gaze. You mean nothing to me. The entire lobby exhaled in shock. Silence, thick and electric. Then Frank flushed crimson. Think your money makes you better? He bellowed, loud and theatrical. Karen collapsed to her knees, face buried in her palms, sobbing for the crowd. We just wanted to talk. You've turned cold. Inhuman, she wailed. The lobby rippled with whispers. Some glanced away in pity. Others leaned in, hooked. I'd had it. I stepped forward. Leave, or I'll have security drag you out. Frank leaned in, voice coiled with venom. You owe us everything, he hissed. We made you. Karen went quiet, then raised her head, eyes sharp, almost cruel. Erase us all you want, but blood doesn't wash off, darling. I turned to security. Get them out, now. Frank chuckled, cruel. You'll regret this, Emily. Karen rose slowly, adjusting her dress with eerie calm. Such a pity, she whispered just loud enough. Rich in cash, bankrupt in love. I watched them go, voices fading into the glass like ghosts. I should have known. People like them never retreat. This was only their first move. The next day, the legal blow came. Megan placed the envelope down gently, concern in her eyes. It's from a law firm, delivered by courier. I didn't touch it, just stared, dread tightening in my chest. Déjà vu flooded me, another ambush, another betrayal, another trap, another pullback into the nightmare I fought to escape. I opened it slowly, bracing for the worst. The words blurred as my pulse roared in my ears. They were suing me, under filial responsibility law. I laughed. Short, cold, disbelieving, unreal. They wanted to legally bind me, to bankroll the people who had disowned me, the same monsters who left me to rot at 17, who vanished for 20 years, were now demanding I clean up their wreckage. I dropped the letter like it was toxic and pinched the bridge of my nose. Megan lingered by the door. Are you okay? I let out a slow breath. Get James on the phone, now. She nodded quickly and vanished. Minutes later, I was pacing like a caged lion, James's calm voice in my ear. Well, he said after I read the letter aloud, depending on the state, they might have a case. I stopped cold. They can leave me as a kid and now I'm financially responsible for them? He sighed. Unlikely, but not impossible. Texas is lenient, but if they stir the right pot, it could get messy. I rubbed my temples. This is insane. They're bluffing, James said. They want you scared enough to pay them off. I laughed, cold and sharp. They think that'll scare me? They've learned nothing. Almost on cue, my phone vibrated. Karen. I nearly let it go to voicemail. But something cracked. I answered before I could think. What do you want? I asked, cold. Karen's voice oozed false warmth. Emily, honey, we're just trying to find a way through this. None of this would be happening if you just cooperated. I gritted my teeth. Help you? You mean after you abandoned me? She sighed like I was being irrational. That was ages ago, darling. Parents mess up, but we're your family. We need help. My fingers curled around the phone. You lost the right to call me your child when you left me behind. Silence. Then her voice sharpened. You really want the world to see this? To know how you treat your parents? I let out a humorless chuckle. The audacity. She thought shame could control me, like it used to. My rage calcified into something hard, something final. Try me, I said, calm, controlled, deadly. Then I ended the call. I stood still, heart calm, not from peace, but fury honed to a blade. They had no idea what I'd become. They had no clue who they were up against. Then they aimed for the one thing I'd built with my bare hands, my business. I should have seen it coming. After the lawsuit, the online smear campaign, and every pathetic ploy to force their way back into my life, it was obvious they wouldn't stop. But anticipation doesn't dull the sting when the hit finally lands. I was buried in paperwork when Megan knocked, peeking in with a face tight with concern. "You might want to look at your inbox," she said, voice low. I raised an eyebrow but reached for my phone anyway. My stomach knotted when I saw the subject line, "Concerning allegations against you." I tapped it open, heart thudding. "Emily, I truly hope this isn't accurate, but I felt you needed to know. We've received several anonymous tips alleging you've mishandled finances, especially regarding family matters. Accusations include stealing from your parents, failing obligations, and building your company on lies. We respect our relationship but need clarification before proceeding further." The message was from one of our largest investors. I scrolled down, each line hammering in my chest. Attached were screenshots, emails from fake accounts parroting the same lies, that I stole from my own family, that I built Haven on theft, that I was a con. I slammed the phone down, chest tight, my hands balled into fists before I could stop them. Megan hovered nervously. "What is this?" I forced a breath. "They're trying to ruin me." "Completely." "Who?" she asked, frowning. I dialed, cold fury in my tone. "Who else?" 15 minutes later, I was on a call with one of our major partners. He paused. "Emily, I want to believe you, but the volume of these messages—" "Can you trace them?" I asked tightly. Silence. Then he exhaled. "Some were traced to an IP linked to your parents' residence." I closed my eyes and gripped the edge of the desk like it was the only thing anchoring me. They had gone too far this time. For years, guilt had been their favorite weapon. When guilt didn't work, they tried public shame. And now, they were aiming for everything I had fought to build. They had no idea what mistake they just made, because this time, it wasn't survival. It was war. I called an emergency strategy meeting with my PR team. They sat across from me, tense and silent. One of them finally spoke. "Our advice? No comment. Wait it out. Stay clean." "No," I said, steel in my voice. "Not again, not this time." I turned to my laptop and began typing. No ghostwriters, no edits, just truth. For years, I endured emotional abuse in silence. I walked away to survive. Now they're using lies to destroy what I've built. I will not be silent anymore. I hit post. Let them come. I was done playing small. Hours later, Frank texted, "Ungrateful little girl, you just declared war." I stared at the message, then replied, "You escalate, I litigate. This is your final warning." I hit send. Silence. But I knew they weren't done. They wanted war. I'd deliver it. The next morning, a court summons landed on my desk. Megan entered quietly, her face pale, a thick envelope in hand. "Law firm envelope," she said, her voice tight. I didn't need to ask who. I already knew. I tore it open carefully, almost ceremonially. The bold heading made it official. Frank and Karen Holloway, vs. Emily Holloway, filed under. Neglect of filial duties per state statute. I let out a laugh, sharp and bitter. So this was the final card they played. When guilt and shame failed, they reached for a court summons. Megan stood frozen. "What now?" I grabbed my phone. "Call James. I'll be there in 30. James sat across, reading through the lawsuit spread over his desk. He scanned the pages, expression darkening. "This case is thin at best," he said. "Texas won't uphold this. But the media storm? That's the real danger." I clenched my fists. "Then we go public, but on my terms." James looked up, eyebrow raised. You ready to go all in? I nodded. The decision was already carved in stone. I'd played defense long enough. Now it was time to show the world who they truly were. That night, I sat down and wrote my truth. I didn't censor a single word. I told it all, every brutal buried piece, about the control, the cruelty masked as parenting, about the train station, 17, alone, forgotten, about how they only reappeared when they were desperate. By sunrise, it was everywhere. The tide didn't just turn, it roared. The same critics who called me ungrateful now changed their tune. They were outraged at my parents. The comments poured in, raging, relentless, raw. This is psychological abuse, plain and simple. You don't leave your child at a station and come back asking for cash. They fooled me too, not anymore. Let justice hit them hard. They deserve nothing, especially not your success. The internet turned into a wave, and I was finally riding it, not drowning. They lost the narrative, and with it, their power. 3 days later, Rachel called. Her voice was thin and cracking. Emmy, they lost everything. I sat in my car, eyes on the skyline. They chose this. Her breath caught. They're blaming you. Of course they are. They always did. I gripped the wheel. No, Rachel. They walked themselves to the edge. I didn't push them. For once, she didn't defend them. A week later, I passed my old house. A for sale sign leaned into the dead grass. The house looked hollow, smaller, like it had given up. I expected vengeance to taste sweet, some kind of triumph, a final blow, but all I felt was air in my lungs again. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance. I didn't need their validation. They had no power over me anymore. And that was all I ever wanted. After 2 decades, I was finally free. No ghosts in my chest, no knots in my gut, no more fear of the doorbell ringing and it being them. I was finally, fully home. Austin shimmered beneath my balcony, warm and golden. A soft breeze kissed my skin. Legs tucked, wine in hand, I finally exhaled. The storm had passed. Only silence remained. But even peace, it seemed, asked for one last confirmation. A knock broke the silence like a match in dry grass. I didn't need to move. I already knew who stood on the other side. I opened the door. Rachel stood there, eyes swollen, face hollow. Emmy, she whispered, voice barely holding. Please. I didn't step forward. I stayed in the frame. They have nothing left, she murmured. Dad's drinking nonstop. Mom keeps begging for one more chance. They're still our parents, Emmy. I held the frame, heart tight. She still didn't understand. They chose this, I said, voice steady. Her face cracked. How can you be so... What? Cold? Heartless? The villain? I finished it for her. Her tears fell. I don't want this to break us. I swallowed the lump, rising. You didn't lose me, Viv. They did the moment they walked away. Rachel shook as she cried, wiping her cheeks with shaking hands. They just need... She tried again. I shook my head. It's not my job to repair what they shattered. Her body sagged with defeat. I stepped back into the apartment. Take care, Rachel. Then I closed the door. Software final. And for the first time, guilt didn't follow me. An hour later, I was back on my balcony, watching the sun sink behind the cityscape. For years, their voices had haunted every quiet moment. The guilt, the shame, the endless, maybe if I had, but now, silence. And it was golden, and for once, it felt holy. I opened my contacts. Aunt Linda's name made me smile, the only real family I'd ever known. I typed, dinner this weekend? My treat. She replied instantly, about time. Mexican or Italian? I smiled. Mexican. Extra margaritas. I took a breath and opened my call log. Their numbers stared back, unblinking, unwelcome. One by one, I hit block. No more open doors, no more back doors to guilt, no more wait. I walked back inside, and this time I locked the door. I wasn't running. I was done running. I was free, and this time I meant it. Before I leave you, let me offer you this. I carried the weight of a past I never consented to. I let shame, fear, and loyalty twist my path. But here's what I know now. Family isn't DNA. It's about who stays when everyone else vanishes. Sometimes those meant to protect us are the ones we need to survive from. And when that happens, you get two choices. Let it own you, or let it burn behind you. Walking away isn't cowardice. That choice makes you stronger, not colder. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. And choosing yourself, after years of being told you were too much or not enough, that's liberation. That's healing. So if anyone ever made you feel guilty for choosing peace over pain, let me say this clearly. You don't owe anyone your pain just because they share your blood. Shared DNA does not equal unconditional access to your life. You deserve peace. You deserve to feel safe.